ArtAlienTV, another game of interplanetary ice spy going on here, but we're not in Gale Crater on Mars. We are in an area called Hyperboreae Undae, dune field located between the North Polar Cap and Sprawl crater. Now, before I show you this image up close, this is pretty crazy, this one. I'll show you it on Google Mars. Here, the area we're looking at between, I've marked it here, Hyperboreae Undae up here, Sprawl crater here. And if I zoom out, you can get an idea. We're right up by the North Pole on Mars. Okay, and I've been searching all around this area, and this is probably the most interesting part of Mars, in my opinion, mainly because of all these little structures. Now, before I start showing you all this, you won't see a lot here because the resolution of these pictures in the area that we're looking at is pretty poor, and they sort of downgrade the images to JPEGs, and they get kind of compressed, and you lose a lot of detail, but you can see there's something going on in here. There's loads of these little structures and dune fields, and this is the area I'm about to show you. Okay, now of course there is this one here. If you click on, you do get occasionally you get these little things you can click on, and it gives you a little close up from the high-rise MRO camera, the Mars orbiter, reconnaissance orbiter, and they are in really good detail. And those are pictures of icy dunes. Okay, really nice. But this image, I've got it up in the folder. Let me show you the page again first, very quickly. Here's the page. Yeah, this image was taken during northern spring, and the dunes still have significant surface frost. The dunes darken with time as the frost sublimates from solar heating, and the dark sands are revealed. Okay, but this is a black and white image, so you've got a limited amount of, well, there's no colour in it at all. It's just shape and form and shadows we're seeing. But interesting nonetheless. And take note, this is 20 kilometres wide, this area. So we can work out the size of these structures quite accurately. And I'm going to show you now some of the clips I've taken. And these are pretty insane. First I'll show you the raw image. Here's the raw image. Done nothing to this. This comes as a TIFF or JPEG. Both are pretty good. Not amazing quality, but pretty good. And straight away I looked at this and thought, oh wow, that is really crazy. You've got the sort of more random stuff here on the top right, which does look like kind of dunes and more sort of random natural structures, I would say, natural looking structures. And then they start to change and become more and more sort of uniform. And when you look over here, they really are uniform. Some of these are sort of rectangular, some are square. Not one of them is exactly the same, and they have these little spots on them. Now they're a bit hard to see until you enhance it, so I'll show you an enhancement of the image, the whole image, and I've rotated it 35 degrees to the left. That is the negative. We don't want to see that. We want to see this one. Okay, now I've really darkened this up and added contrast to it, so you can actually see the shapes nice and clearly and the outlines of these what look like intelligent structures. Now they may not be, but they do look intelligent. Why? Because of the uniformity, and we assume that uniformity means intelligent structures. Well, it doesn't necessarily mean that. If these were straighter, in straighter lines, and were more square and rectangular, some of them really are really neat looking, but a lot of them aren't. But on the other hand, depending on your point of view, could these be intelligent structures that are partially buried, causing them to look more random? Because they do seem very uniform, especially up here. You've got these up here. Look how uniform they are. Absolutely insane. Look at that. But none of these lines are exactly straight. They follow the undulations of the actual ground topography. In other words, there's a sort of slight hill, and then it goes kind of down, and it goes back up here. You can actually work out from the undulations here and lines that this is not flat. This is going up and down, which is why these are kind of lined up like they are. So could these actually be, I mean, some of these do look very square or rectangular. Most of them are rectangular. And of course, if you were to build a rectangular building and put it on Mars, or say in a desert, and it got partially covered in sand blown over it, and then it got frosted up, and the temperature dropped right down to like a minus 180, like it does in this area regularly, especially in the winter, then what would happen then? Is it possible that these are actual buildings and that sand is blown over them and then frozen and then sort of fractured slightly in places as it's kind of defrosted and frozen again and that kind of thing? Is that possible? I think it is. Some of you out there may think these are all completely natural, but I don't think they all are completely natural. These on the right do look natural. Those look like kind of the standard kind of crazy dune structures we see all over Mars, in fact, especially in the northern areas. And then you have all these. Okay, so I took some more clips and some close-ups. I took a negative of it. I just flipped it to negative. It's not that one, it's this one. There we are. Just to bring it home to you, the uniformity of these structures, rectangular structures. Now these are really large, and I worked it out because this is a 20 kilometre wide image. I worked out approximately that there's about 40 or 50. If you were to get one of these, you could actually fit it across the images around about 45 times. So there's something around 400 metres wide, 400 to 500 metres wide. It's insane. These are massive. So if these are buildings, which they may well not be, of course, then they're very large. I mean, 400 meters, that's huge. There's about 3.5 feet per meter. So, you're talking 1,200 feet. I mean, that is really large. But many of the structures we've seen on the Moon and on Mars are very, very large. Some of them are very small. So scale is not really an issue because we don't know what these are. For sure, NASA, as usual, have called them dunes, which is what they always call things. And if you've seen if you've watched my recent video, I recommend, if you haven't, there will be a link to this at the end, on the cards at the end of the video. You can just click on that. This one here, Thousands of Mars Domes. There's a longer version. I'll probably link to the longer one because that actually explains it more here. And these are artificial structures, and there are thousands and thousands of them. And I'm going to show some more in a minute, which I think may be related to these dome structures that I've previously published. So there we have it. Let me show you some more clips of that first before we go on back to Google Mars, because I've done some nice clips here for you. Here's a raw clip. Now I've rotated this and straightened it out. That's all I've done, and enlarged it. I haven't added anything to it. This is completely raw apart from the size. And you've got these spots. They've all got spots on. Little spots. And they sort of range from between about 5 to 10 or 15 spots per rectangular dune, so-called dune structure, okay? You can actually see them in the raw image. I'll flip to the enhanced one, and then they really jump out at you. You can see the rectangular shapes. Now a lot of these are broken up, a lot of these are more random and smaller. Some of them are sort of triangular shaped in between, a bit rough. Is it possible that these are intelligent structures that have had sand blow over them and then freeze and crack, like I said? Or are they just dunes that are frozen and cracked in a fairly uniform way, which I find a bit, or I should say very unusual. Okay, I don't know, I couldn't prove it either way, but basically they probably are dunes. But I thought that a lot of these looked artificial, and the way they're sort of lined up together does follow the ground. They sort of undulate slightly, but other than that, they are very interesting. The one in the blue filter I think looks clearer. You can just see in the blue spectrum better, I think. But that was really cool. And I've got some close-ups here. This is black and white. It gets a bit fuzzy when you get in close, as usual with these things. The blue one looks slightly better. It looks better if you go back a bit like that. But some of these are very uniform. But none of them are exactly the same. Now, would buildings all be exactly the same? No, they wouldn't. But there would be more uniformity if these were buildings. And if these were streets, I would expect there to be a wider gap between them. These are kind of right up next to each other, like sardines, you know, they're really stuffed together, these things. So maybe they are natural. Maybe that's a completely natural thing. And I've got them from the other angle here. Does that look more like buildings now? But you can see the way they undulate, and they go up and down slightly. And some of them are wider, like here. Let's get that's a different colour filter on that, just to show the same thing. But in blue, I do think they look better. But that, to me, looks pretty artificial. Now, is it possible that they build all their buildings slightly different in size and shape, and they're not all uniform? Or are these all very similar in size and shape, and they're just kind of half buried, so that they look more random than they actually are? I mean, if you were to dig under this sand, perhaps, maybe these are a lot more uniform, and maybe there are streets under here, maybe there are all sorts of things under here, who knows? But they've all got these spots on, and what that reminded me of was another video I did a while back about Angustus labyrinthus. Now, Angustus labyrinthus, I'm just going to show you a quick image clip of that. Here's Google Earth. The area this is in is you've got Escorial crater here, and we've got Hyperboreae Undae, and this particular area is supposed to be somewhere here. And if you look on the page, it gives you a little sort of indication of where we are in this image. So it's you've got the crater here, and it's just up to the right. So that gives you a pretty good indication. So we're approximately here, not exactly there, but sort of probably a bit further up. Okay, so what was I going to show you? Right, I was going to show you a picture of Angustus labyrinthus. Now I've done stuff on this before, and you'll find this in my list of videos on YouTube. Oh, here it is: Mars desert plants and artificial structures, seasonal vegetation. Now it's well worth looking at that, because that's similar kind of stuff we're seeing there to here today. And you've got in that area, you have all these little blobs, dark patches, which I think are organic growth, seasonal organic growth. And that video I just showed you just a second ago will explain what I think is happening here. So you get these patches on Mars, and these are seasonal. And in other words, in the spring and summer they appear, and in the winter they disappear. And they change colour and density, these dark patches. So I think these are growth. A type of lichen or similar plant growth on the surface, icy surface, okay? Which obviously melts in the summer, partially at least, and then refreezes in the winter. Okay, let's go back to where we were, getting a bit sidetracked here. So, are these artificial structures, or are they all completely natural? I'm not sure. But when I show you this stuff, let's go back to the folder. I've already shown you these. I'll put clips of these in at the end anyway, again, so you can see them up close and pause and have a really good look. But they do seem to have these blobs, these spots, and these spots may well be plant growth or plant material growing on these structures, which may retain liquid water at least some of the time. Right, that's my theory. Can't prove it, but that's a theory, and theories are there to be proved. So these blobs could be organic growth. I'm not saying they are. They may well be stains caused by frozen carbon dioxide or something like that. That's the usual excuse we get from NASA. But that may well be the case, but I don't think it's always the case. So I'll put these clips in again at the end. We've already seen those. Let's go to Google Earth and let me show you some other things in this area. Now, I started looking sort of to the east of that and started finding loads and loads of stuff. And you can see where all these yellow marks are on here. They go right up to here. Okay, let me orientate that north just so you know which way you're looking. This is as you look at Mars from there. Okay, and then you go up to the top, and you've got this. You can see quite clearly that line of data here, and you can see where all the detail is. So let's go to formations 1. Now these start off quite dark and actually look like trees almost, but they're in line formations, long lines, okay? And you don't see a lot of detail here. These are too dark and there's not much to see. So let's go to the next lot, which are just up here, quite a long way across. It's about 500 miles further east, and now we're starting to see them a little bit more clearly, but not that clearly. But you've got more line formations here, and some of these are joined up with dunes joining them. Now these may well be dunes, some of them, maybe all of them. But when we get further east and north, as I'll show you in a minute, they start to get a little bit more defined and a lot more reflective, like this. Okay, these, and they look square, many of them, and they probably aren't square. The problem is with the JPEG format is that things tend to look square when they're sharpened up. It sharpens up the shadows in a very square kind of way. So things that aren't very square end up looking more square sometimes. But they may well be. These may actually be square buildings, multiple square buildings. And they're in clusters, and some of them are quite clear and reflective. You can see these reflections. They're all approximately the same size, like I showed on the Mars Domes video a while back, which I mentioned earlier. Most of these are the same. Now, would dunes all be the same size and separate entities like this? I don't think so. There's a nice line of them there, but a lot of them aren't very clear, but occasionally you see some that are really clear, and they get sort of clearer as we go further up. Some of these are quite reflective. Those there look pretty cool, and they're starting to get even clearer as we go up to formations 4, which is over here. This is where they start getting interesting, and you can actually see a lot of them are rectangular shaped, or sort of they have bits coming off them. Now the images may have been sharpened up quite a lot. Now when you over sharpen an image, JPEGs tend to break up, and so you get these kind of little reflective artifacts coming off. So that may be where the image has been badly processed. But these things are all over this part of Mars, and they stretch for thousands of miles, all up this edge of the polar region in the melt zone, which, as I've said before, is an important area, because if we were to colonize Mars and perhaps live using vast amounts of water to survive, then we would need to get it from somewhere like this, because this is where the ice naturally melts seasonally and would be freely available. But the only problem is it gets very, very cold. We'd probably have to live near the equator and then extract water from the ground, because that would be safer, because it would be a lot warmer. But now we're starting to see, now we're up to line formations. Right, there's a really interesting bunch here, and these are getting very reflective. Now, would dunes be that reflective? These look metallic. Are they buildings? A lot of them are kind of like L-shaped, or sort of yeah, it's an angle shape. See that L-shaped one? There's like a little V-shaped one and a W-shaped one there. Now, of course, a lot of these may be dunes, but why would they all be separate? And look how clear they are. A lot of these are pretty clear, and most of them look kind of rectangular, like the domes I showed you before. So yes, I started looking a lot more closely at these, and there are lots of them in line formation, and they all seem to be roughly the same distance apart. Not exactly the same, some are slightly closer, but like I showed you before with the dome images before, a lot of these are in formation. Now, of course, if you dropped, say you've got like 1,000 marbles, right, and dropped them on the carpet, some of them would look like they're in formation, just randomly look that way, because that's the way our eyes look for patterns, okay, patternicity. But when you look along here, some of these are in long straight lines. And they go all through this dark area here, which is too dark to see any detail. But some of them are really quite shiny and very equally spaced and don't look natural. I'm not saying all these are unnatural, I'm not saying all of them are natural, but a lot of them look very shiny, like these here, and rectangular. Some look more kind of rounded. Some are joined up together where the sand is probably blown across them and they kind of formed a line, like we got there, in lines going that way. And you can follow these patterns, and they go on and on. I mean, I could go on all day about these. I mean, there's so many of them. I've just picked out some of the sort of clearer areas. This is probably the best area here, where they're really reflective and quite clear, and you can actually clearly see shadows on them and stuff, you know. They really look pretty cool. I mean, look how shiny they are. These here. And there are smaller clusters, larger clusters, some are in straight lines, some are kind of darker. As we get up here, they get much darker and harder to see, but they're still there. There's still millions of these things, and are they all just dunes? Separate entity dunes, which are very, very odd. Or are they actual buildings? Are some of these buildings, are some of these trees? Some of these darker ones kind of look like patches of growth, but some of them don't. I mean, some of them look really reflective, and there's another line formation up here. Now these start to join up a lot more up in this area, but they don't look as reflective. But of course, this was taken at a different time. These areas are often taken, you can see where they join the images together. Some are more blue, some are more green. And this area does change colour every year. This goes green every year. Large parts of this melt zone go green when the ice melts. So I do think a lot of this is organic growth, and some of these are really, really quite interesting. And let's go to line formation 3. These here in a sort of nice shape there, and a nice line. Are these herds of animals? No, I don't think they are. Some people have said that, but they're way too big. Let's measure one of these. These are let's do it in feet. Okay, yes. Let's go in and measure that one. That one, say, this is about an average size one here. These are hundreds of feet across. Let's do another one, actually. That's about an average size. Let's do that one. Let's go a bit more accurate this time. So they couldn't possibly be animals that size, could they? I don't think so. Yeah, see, look, over 400 feet. Some have got sand kind of up against them, so they look larger. Some are clustered. I mean, they're just insane, you know. And when you look at how far apart these spread, they go right the way through this area. Now, is it possible that these are buildings that were built before the climate change on Mars? Are we looking at giant cities here that sprawl all the way across the melt zone areas, the northern plains and melt zones? I mean, it's just insane. Some of them are really clear. I think these are the clearest, formation 5 here. I mean, you can find these really easily. So all you have to do is look at Mars and then go to the northern area and then look around this kind of, what looks like a kind of line where they join the images together. You have obviously the polar ice cap there, and then we have this line that goes all along. Just look along this line. Zoom in, have a look. I mean, there are millions of these things, and some of this data is older and is much darker, and that actually looks more like trees. And some of them are just really clear. And number 5 here, I've spent hours looking at these over the last couple of days, mainly because I was sent an image by somebody, a researcher, of what looks like a kind of a crash saucer or UFO on the surface. But these are the clearest here in this particular area. 76 north, 44 east, approximately, and you'll find them. There's so many of them, you can't really miss them. like that, you know. I mean, look for that big crater, look just below it. That's the best area to look at. You've got that black long triangle there, which looks a bit like a really long pizza slice, just to the northeast of that, and you will find the clearest ones. Astonishing. I mean, I know other people have done videos on these, but I didn't really realise how many of these things there were. There are millions upon millions of these things, but why would they be so reflective and square like these are? Let's measure one of those. I'd imagine it'd be around 400 feet, 4 to 500 again. That's a nice one there. Let's measure that one from there to there. Oh, it's a bit less than 400. So they do vary a bit, but of course, why wouldn't they? You know. So there we have it. And as reference, now this is I just picked this up. I had to pause the video a minute ago because my wife came back from work. So I lost track a little bit there. So I do apologise if this has gone on a bit longer than it should have done. Where was I? Yeah, I had this other link here. Now I typed in Hyperboreae Undae, which I got from this page. I just copied it from there, which is the source image page, and I typed it into Google and then looked up images and came up with this. Now this is on Wikipedia, so I went to the Wikipedia page and here we have it. Let's open that in a viewer. Now this is the same area, not exactly the same area, but the same general area as the main image I was showing you earlier, and these look a lot more natural. And when you zoom in, you can see the same sort of long undulating formations of kind of rectangles and squares, but none of them are perfectly rectangular and none of them are perfectly square, and you have a load more random sort of dunes here to the upper right. So I'll have links to all these, of course, and you can have a closer look. These do look more natural, but what if some of these are actually buildings that are covered in sand and then frozen? What about the spots on them? What are these spots? Are they growth? Are these little plants or patches of lichen? I mean, structures like this would surely collect moisture. So there we have it. They do look rather artificial, but they are probably natural. But I wouldn't like to place money on it either way, to be honest. And in negative, they look really cool, like a load of houses. And why would dunes be that reflective? Doesn't make any sense. And why would dunes be like separate entities like this, all separate? I can understand them when they join up, but this line here, I mean, that's just nuts. I mean, does that look like a natural set of dunes to you there? I just can't see it. I'm sorry. I'm sure a lot of these are, but I mean, some of these are so bright and reflective, like these here. Look how bright they are. So yeah, do check out my other videos. Of course, there are the other domes that I showed recently. Now, I did send these to the press actually yesterday, and none of them have printed it yet. So I'm just going to show you the images I sent to the press. Here's the cover of the video with these domes, and they're approximately the same size as the ones I just showed you. So they're very similar. Here's an enhancement where I clipped out this straight line formation here, and I've just taken a patch of them there and enlarged it slightly and enhanced it. I sent this to the press. Whether any of them will print it, I don't know. Some may not. If they don't, I'll resend it until they do. Maybe one or two will. Sometimes you get lucky and one of the big papers like the Daily Mail will print something and then it goes viral because everyone else prints it. But I've been fascinated by these things for a while now, and they're so uniform and they look a lot smoother in this image. This is higher resolution and they look a lot smoother, but they're rectangular. They're not actually round, they're rectangular, they're long. See? They're longer on that side than they are that way. So they're rectangles. They're not actually round. Some of them look round, but if you get a rectangle or a square block and tip sand over it, it makes it look rounder. Simple as that. So I don't think these are actually domes as such. I think they are structures, rectangular structures. And when you get closer, they're kind of more rectangular. But you've really got to get in close. And actually the ones on Google Mars here do show that they're rectangular, see? A lot of them. They're longer that way. So that matches up with what I've been finding elsewhere. And they're just insane. So there we have it. I mean, I won't go on any longer. I've already gone far too long on this video. I'm going to have to cut it down a bit because I was interrupted there. So there we have it. Are these buildings, are these natural? Are they all natural, or are they all unnatural, or are they a bit of both? I think they're a bit of both, and I think some of these were possibly city houses, large buildings, and many of them have been covered in sand, but some of them are totally exposed and very shiny looking, like these here. Okay, thanks for watching, everybody. Clips coming up now, and don't forget to share on social media, and please give it a thumbs up. Bye for now.